What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So as the title you can see, had some issues with the WRX. So long story short, I got the Cobb accessport, the Cobb big SF intake, and got it all installed, which I did film, and unfortunately lost all the video files. The SD card I was using ended up getting corrupted somehow, and so everything I had filmed is now gone. And I didn't feel like re-filming all of that and uninstalling everything, so I guess I'll just kind of give you an update on the car instead. I now have two of these guys. So this is the first one that I got with the Stage 1 Plus package, and I'll post a little video clip here what has happened. Basically, it died. Don't know why. Cobb doesn't know why, so they sent me out a new one, and it's been working fine ever since. So just must have been a bad unit. That being said, kind of a quick update on the car as I drop my keys on the ground here. So since you saw the car last, with the coilover install video, as you can see, it's still got the same wheels. Coilovers have been phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about them for the price. But a few things that changed. Did go with some rock blocks, mud flaps. Still have the nameless muffler delete. I did get the premium auto styling emblem overlays. The car got the windows tinted with 25% tint, which is the legal limit here in Washington. The tinter I go through said I could go darker, but I have such a hard time seeing out of tinted windows at night. I just stuck with that. Even this being as dark as it is, it's hard to see out at night for me. Another thing, got this. Mind you, the car is filthy right now, it needs a bath. But rear window spoiler, and then coming along to the front here, did a license plate relocating bracket, which just goes in the tow hook location, and then once again another emblem overlay, and then the nameless license plate delete, block off plate, whatever you want to call it. So that's that as far as updating on the car. Right here, we've got a shifter stop, shifter bushing, and then a short shifter plate. Now I was going to go with the Boomba short shifter plate, but I did a little research and I found this guy here. It is actually, I can't remember what brand it is. Some off-brand deal, but it's almost 100% identical to the Boomba short shift plate. And then same thing with this stuff. I was gonna go with the Perrin stuff, but I found this off-brand shift stop, which, I mean, all it is a chunk of aluminum, so really shouldn't matter if it says Perrin on it or not. Same thing with the shifter bushing, it's just a chunk of brass, so we'll give it a shot. So let's go ahead and get the car pulled in, and we'll start on the probably the shifter stop first, and then we'll get the car up in the air and we'll get going on this guy. Alright, first things first. Rainier beer. Check. Always refreshing. So, I'm gonna probably start with this guy first. We can do it all inside the car. Out here. Get out of there. So right here is the shifter stop, and then the brass shifter bushing. And I can't remember if this goes inside the car or underneath the car. We'll have to look here. And then it comes with some instructions here, I'm guessing for the shifter stop. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really think I need much instructions there. Yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and get in the car and we'll start tearing some trim pieces apart and get to where we need to get to. Okay, so first thing, I just kind of wanted to show what this shifter stop's going to do. So on these cars from the factory, in first and second gear, so as you can see I'm in first gear there, see all that slop there? That's in gear, and it's got a lot of slop to the left. Basically what that shifter stop's going to do is allow it to only come over far enough to go into gear and take that slop out. So first things first, what we're going to do is take off this shift knob here. It's got some pretty good weight to it. I didn't realize how heavy the factory shift knobs were. I'm going to set the camera up here. Hopefully you guys can see what's going on here. So what you're going to do here is where the shifter boot is and this plastic trim piece around here, you're going to grab it and you're just going to pull straight up on it, and that's just going to release little tabs there, and then your shifter boot will just come off like that. Okay, so where we're going to be working with right here is these two bolts right there. So the shift stop plate is actually going to sit right here, and down on the shifter itself it's going to ride up against that shift stop, so it only allows it to go over far enough to where it'll go in gear, but not so far over to where you get all that slop. So let's go ahead and remove these two bolts. They're going to be 10 millimeters, and then we'll get that shifter stop in place here. Okay, I'm going to set the camera down again, and we're going to go ahead and remove these two 10 millimeter bolts. Okay, so your shifter stop is just going to sit down in here like so, and then you're not going to reuse this hardware that comes off there. Save it though, just in case you want to go back to stock, but we're going to use the included hardware with the shift stop plate. Okay, so I got those washers. They're just sitting right on top of the 5th and 6th gear shifter stop there, factory one. We're going to go ahead and put our Allen bolts through, and I'm going to go ahead and put the camera up here again so I can get this all lined up, and I'll show you what it looks like once we get there. Okay, so I got the bolts kind of just finger tight right now. I'm going to go ahead and get these tightened down. Not all the way, you still want it loose because we're going to have to adjust the shift stop for 1st and 2nd, and then we're now going to have to adjust the shift stop for 5th and 6th gear since we've moved all this stuff. So let's go ahead and get these Just kind of snugged down a little bit, enough to where it's not flopping around, but we can still move it. Okay, so that is that. So as you can see, I can still move it around. Same thing with the 5th and 6th gear stop. So what we're going to do now is we're going to adjust the shift stop for the 1st and 2nd gear. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to put the car in 1st gear, and you're going to move this over just to where it touches that shift stop, and you're just going to snug it down a little bit here. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go into 2nd gear, let it kind of rest in its neutral position, push that shift stop over just to where there's enough play in it, and you're going to go ahead and tighten this other side down. Not super tight yet, but just enough to where. And this takes a little bit of playing with to get it in the right spot. So that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and just snug that down a little bit more. So right now, it only goes over far enough to go into gear. There's going to be a little bit of play. You don't want it so tight to where it's hard to go into gear, but you want it far enough over to where it takes that slop out going into gear. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the 5th and 6th. So now I want to set it up so that same thing, at your 5th and 6th gear, the slop is taken out of it, but it's not so tight to where you can't get it into gear. So that looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this all down, and then we'll see how it looks afterwards. Okay, I got everything pretty well locked down now. I'm just going to go ahead and throw the shift knob on here just so you can kind of see the difference. I'm not going to do it super tight. So now, when I want to go into 1st or 2nd gear, there's that little tiny bit of movement, and it hits that shift stop. Kind of see the difference there. There's not a whole lot of slop there, just enough to where it's not hard to get it into gear, because if you do it, like I said, too tight, it does make it hard to get into 1st and 2nd gear, which you don't want. That kind of defeats the purpose of this whole thing. But once again, 2nd gear, not a whole lot of slop. Still goes into 3rd and 4th, of course, because there's nothing there stopping it. And then 6th gear, just fine. Or not 6th, 5th, sorry. And then 6th gear, just fine. And then we can just double check that our reverse lockout works. It still goes into reverse. So that looks pretty good. Okay, figured I'd just show you with everything put back together. And it's pretty easy to put back on. You just slide the boot back over, and it just sits on the reverse lockout little dealio, and then it just clips back into place. But now, so 1st gear, just over that little tiny bit. Like I said, it's going to have a little bit of play depending on how tight you get it. It's better to have a little bit than have it so tight to where it's really hard to get in 1st and 2nd. And same thing, down into 2nd, 3rd, 4th, nothing to it there. And then we did adjust the shift stop for 5th and 6th, because once you pull those 2 bolts out, that shift stop does get loose. So, but we can go into 5th and 6th no problem, and then pull the reverse lockout up, and we can get into reverse no problem. So that'll do it for the shift stop. Let's go ahead and do a measurement first of the shifter before the shifter bushing and the short shift plate, just so you can see the difference that it does as far as the throw is concerned. let's go ahead and just put it up into third. And I'm gonna measure just from the trim, and we'll go to the center of the shift knob roughly. So we're at about 4.5 inches, actually about 4 3/8 roughly, from the trim to the center of the shift knob. And let's go ahead and put it into fourth gear. So we're almost at about 9 inches. Actually, it's more like 8 3/4 roughly, to the center there. And it should be the same through all gears, so we'll just do third and fourth as a reference. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the car up in the air, and we'll get going on the shifter bushing and the short shift plate. First thing we're going to pull off here, it's going to be these two 12mm bolts holding this heat shield or whatever the heck it is. And this will give us access to where we need to work here. So right here is where your shifter bushing is going to go. The actual shifter plate is going to be right here where these shifter linkages are connected. Okay, so quick update. It actually looks like it's going to be easier to just take off the transmission support bracket. Getting up in here and where we need to work is going to be kind of tight with all that stuff on there, so I'm going to go ahead and get that removed. Okay, got the transmission mount out of the way. So let's go ahead. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3 bolts we got to pull off to get to the shift plate there. Okay, another quick update here. So there's actually a 4th bolt on this little heat shield here. It's way up on top of the transmission, and I don't have anything that can get to it. So I'm just gonna kind of bend this up out of the way and see if I can get this shift plate out without doing that. So basically what we're gonna do from here, you got this little cotter pin deal. We're gonna pull that out, pull the shifter bushing and cable off, and then up in here where the actual shifter plate mounts to the transmission, there is a roll pin that we're gonna have to punch out, and I'll go ahead and show you that once I get to that point. Okay, before I get too far, so here is the little cotter pin thing. There's actually a washer that goes on the outside of that, and here is the shifter linkage. So right there is the bushing we're going to be replacing. It's just a little rubber bushing with a brass insert in the middle. But up on here, your shift plate. I'll go ahead and show you the short shifter version here. So there's going to be a roll pin that's going to go through this hole, and this hole right here actually sits on the shifter assembly on the transmission, and that roll pin is what locks it into place. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get that roll pin out, and then we'll see about getting this new one in there. Okay, I've got the factory shift plate out, and trying to kind of compare the difference between them. It looks like where the actual shifter mounts is maybe up just a hair higher. Yeah. Just kind of compare here, try to line these holes up. So as you can see, where the actual shifter mounts is up a little bit higher. And the other thing I noticed too is this thing is considerably heavier than the factory shift plate. And then here's the roll pin that I removed. So this just goes right there, up through that, and then on the transmission itself, it just mounts to, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me grab my light. Okay, so I ran into a little bit of an issue here. So this shifter plate is considerably thicker in this region, as you can see, than the factory one. and it's actually hitting on this heat shield up here. So it looks like we're actually gonna have to remove that and probably not reinstall it. Okay, after exchanging a few choice words with this stupid thing, I finally got that out, and I got the new shifter plate installed up in here, and I've got the roll pin put back in, which was quite the challenge, but it is doable. I found it actually was easier if you just set the roll pin in and kind of put it in place before you throw that shifter plate up in there. It was a little bit harder to line the hole up at that point, but you can kind of eyeball it, and the roll pin's only going to go through if the holes line up, so you'll know if it's lined up or not. Okay, so after doing some looking, it looks like the easiest way to get the factory bushing out is going to be taking a flat blade screwdriver and actually sticking it through the bushing and kind of wiggling it, and it will pop out. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll show you once it's out. Okay, so I got the bushing out, and just to kind of compare it to the brass bushing here, yeah, it's a pretty noticeable difference as far as how solid it is. This thing is just mushy, and does not give a very good shifter feel. So the next step is actually going to be taking some sort of grease. If you do buy the pair-in one and not just the off-brand one like I did, it will come with some grease. You just want to grease it up really good so that when you put your shifter linkage back over, it's going to be easier to get on. Okay, so I ran into a little bit of a snag. This bushing actually is a really tight fit over that pin that it sits on. And that's something that people had mentioned about that shift plate, was that the tolerances were super duper tight. As you can see on the factory one, just slips right on there. On the aftermarket one, it is extremely tight, which I guess is a good and bad thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and ream this out just slightly to where it slides over there a little bit easier, because otherwise I'm not gonna be able to get that on there. Okay, I got the shifter bushing installed. The shifter linkage, once you grease it up really good, all I used was just some kind of bearing grease, and lubed up the O-rings around it. The shifter linkage just slides right on, and then you'll put your washer and your cotter key back in place. If you are gonna do both of these at the same time, I would recommend maybe trying to put that shifter bushing on the shift plate before you put it up in the car. You might have a little bit easier time. Once I reamed it out though, it came in or slid on there pretty easy. I just took a drill bit pretty much the same size and kind of ran it in and out, and wiggled it around enough to where it didn't take too much material off to where it was going to be sloppy, but enough to where it would slide on there. And it's still a pretty tight fit. I had to really finagle it to get on there. But as of this point, what you're going to do is go ahead and put your transmission mount and heat shield and all that stuff back in place. And then also this other little heat shield deal that covers up the shifter linkage. So I'm going to go ahead and put all that stuff on. I'll get the car lowered down, and then we'll see the difference between the stock shift plate and the short throw shift plate. Okay, so let me wipe my hands off here a little bit because they're absolutely disgusting. Probably should wear gloves, but my hands sweat so bad I don't like wearing gloves. Okay, so let's see what difference this has made. Oh wow, that is a huge difference. And mind you, you can still do like the Boomba short throw shifter also up here, and you can get even shorter throw than that, but that is quite the difference. So let's measure here again. Put it up in third gear. We're going to measure off of the same spot. So we're looking about 5.5 to the center line. And about 8.5 down in 4th gear. So that is quite a big difference. I mean, just, man, that's how the car should have came. And I know they had the factory STI short throw shifter options, but I've driven those cars that have those, and this feels much better than that even. So definitely highly recommend this. I mean, I think all the parts with the shifter stop, the bushing, and the short throw shifter plate, I think I'm into it maybe 50 bucks, 60 bucks, something like that. And I'll link down in the description the parts I bought. Everything was bought off Amazon. And do I recommend getting name brand stuff? Yes. If you have the money for it. This line's off here, filthy. If you have the money for it, I definitely recommend buying name brand stuff. However, there's certain parts like this, for example, that they're chunks of metal. They're not pieces that are, I wouldn't say not critical, because they're critical, you need to be able to shift. But you're not going to see them. Nobody's going to know what brand you put in there, and it does the same thing as the name brand stuff. Like the shifter plate that I put in there is, I think, 100% identical to the Boomba one that you can get. And then the shift stop I got, and then the bushing are, I mean, they're pretty much the same thing as the Perrin stuff, just like 50% cheaper, if not more. I don't know what the price is on the Perrin stuff, but definitely recommend it. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I'm gonna do probably kind of a driving impressions video, maybe do like a POV driving video, giving a little bit of an overview of what I think of the car so far. Now that I've owned it for a little over 2 months, almost 3 months now, and kind of let you know how I feel about the car, some things I don't like about the car, some things I love about the car, and then yeah, so we'll see you in the next one. Peace.